Welcome back to Art with Marsha. I can hardly believe we've made it to the final 6 colors of the Ultimate AI palette. Over the last several videos, we've built this palette one color at a time, from bright sunshine yellows to glowing reds to peaceful blues and beautiful landscape greens. Now we're finishing with the colors that quietly hold every painting together. These aren't always the colors people get excited about when they're buying new paints. They're not flashy, they're not the brightest colors in the palette, but in my opinion, they're some of the most important. These earth colors create warmth, realistic shadows, weathered wood, stone, tree bark, animal fur, old buildings, and all of the subtle details that make a painting feel believable. Without these colors, landscapes often feel flat. Portraits lose warmth, buildings lose character, and nature simply doesn't quite feel as natural. So, today we're finishing out the Ultimate AI palette with 6 colors that I honestly couldn't imagine painting without. Let's begin with what I think is one of the greatest watercolor pigments ever made. These final 6 colors are Burnt Sienna, Transparent Red Oxide, Burnt Umber, Sepia, Payne's Gray, and Lunar Black. So AI selected Daniel Smith's version of Burnt Sienna. So if watercolor had a best friend, I think it would probably be Burnt Sienna. I honestly can't remember owning a watercolor palette that didn't include this color. It's dependable, it's versatile, and somehow it seems to improve almost every painting it touches. It uses PBR7, which is calcined natural iron oxide. It is transparent. Its color temperature is warm. Its granulation is medium, and it is low staining with excellent light fastness. One of the things I love about Daniel Smith's Burnt Sienna is that it's a beautiful balance. It has enough warmth to bring life into a painting, but it never feels overly orange. Instead, it captures those rich, earthy colors we see everywhere in nature. I reach for Burnt Sienna constantly if I'm painting tree trunks, rustic fences, sometimes even animal fur. Also, in brick buildings, autumn landscapes, woodland scenes, wooden boats, even portraits. In fact, it's one of the greatest mixing colors in watercolor. One of the first color combinations most watercolor artists learn is Burnt Sienna with French Marine. Those 2 colors create an incredible range of neutral grays, soft blacks, and beautiful atmospheric shadows. It's a classic combination because it works. Some other great mixtures is with Payne's Gray for realistic tree bark, Buff Titanium for golden animal fur, Raw Sienna for warm weathered wood, Green Gold for natural woodland shadows. One of the things I've learned over the years is that Burnt Sienna rarely steals the spotlight. Instead, it quietly supports every other color around it. And honestly, I think that's what makes it one of the most valuable paints in the entire palette. So we've started with one of watercolor's greatest classics. Now we're moving into a color that feels just a little richer, a little deeper, and full of history. So of course we're talking about Transparent Red Oxide by Daniel Smith. So every time I paint with Transparent Red Oxide, I think about old places, like historic brick buildings, weathered barns, rusted farm equipment, red rock canyons. Could be ancient rooftops. It really feels like it has a story to tell every time it's used. Its pigment information is PR101, which is synthetic red iron oxide. It is transparent, it's warm, and it's a medium granulation with low staining, but an excellent light fastness. So although Burnt Sienna and Transparent Red Oxide are both earthy colors, they have very different personalities. So Burnt Sienna felt warm and comforting, while Transparent Red Oxide feels bold and dramatic. Because it's transparent, you can build beautiful glowing layers that create remarkable depth without making a painting feel heavy. It's one of the best colors for painting any red rock formations like the Grand Canyon, rusted metal, brick walls, desert landscapes, autumn details, antique architecture, wooden barns, and weathered machinery. Besides just using French ultramarine mixed for natural shadows, you can also use quinacridone gold hue for glowing autumn colors, Payne's gray for industrial texture, and raw sienna for warm desert scenes. One thing I especially enjoy about Transparent Red Oxide is how much character it brings to a painting. Sometimes you don't want everything to look new and polished. Sometimes you want a building to feel like it stood there for 100 years, or a fence that's been weathered by countless seasons. This paint helps tell those stories. That's why it earned a place in the Ultimate AI palette. So we've explored two beautiful warm earth colors that bring richness and history to our paintings. Now we're going to move into the deeper browns. These next colors are some of the hardest working pigments in the entire palette, quietly creating shadows, texture, and depth in almost every subject we paint. Next up is Burnt Umber by Winsor & Newton Professional. So Burnt Umber is one of those colors that quietly earns its place almost every time I paint. It doesn't demand attention. Instead, it supports almost every other color around it. Whenever I need depth without making a pigment painting feel harsh, Burnt Umber is usually the first brown I'll reach for. It uses pigment code PBR7, which is calcined natural iron oxide. It is transparent. It is a warm to neutral temperature. It has a light granulation and low staining, with an excellent light fastness. Although Burnt Umber and Burnt Sienna share the same natural earth pigment family, they have completely different personalities. So where Burnt Sienna felt warm and glowing, Burnt Umber feels deeper, cooler, and much more grounded. It's one of those colors that instantly creates the feeling of age and realism. So it can be used in tree bark, wooden fences, antique furniture, cabins, hair, animal fur. It's really quite versatile. One of the reasons why AI chose Winsor & Newton Professional version is because it has such a beautiful transparency. Even in darker passages, it never feels muddy. Instead, it allows the paper to continue reflecting light through the wash, which keeps the painting feeling fresh. Some of the best mixtures with Burnt Umber is French ultramarine for beautiful natural shadows, Payne's gray for those deep woodland shadows, raw sienna for weathered wood, green gold for that natural mossy bark, and my favorite undersea green for rich forest floors. One thing I've noticed over the years is that beginners sometimes overlook Burnt Umber because it seems ordinary. But experienced watercolor artists know just how useful this color really is. It's one of those dependable paints that quietly makes everything else look better. So our next color takes that idea one step further. If Burnt Umber reminds me of weathered wood, then Sepia reminds me of old photographs, handwritten journals, and treasured memories. So Sepia was selected from Schmincke. It's always felt nostalgic to me. Maybe it's because so many old photographs and vintage drawings were created in these warm brown tones. Or maybe it's because it has such a timeless elegance. Whatever the reason, every time I paint with sepia, it immediately adds character. It uses pigment codes PBK 11 and PR 101, which PK 11 is Mars Black and PR 101 is synthetic red iron oxide. It's semi-transparent with a warm temperature, medium granulation, and medium staining, with an excellent light fastness. One of the things I love about Schmincke's sepia is that it creates dark values without feeling as heavy as pure black. That's one of the reasons why I use it so often. Sometimes black can be overpowering, but sepia gives me the depth while still allowing the painting to feel warm and inviting. So one of my favorite ways of using it is especially when I do ink style sketches. It just can look so old and look like it was done hundreds of years ago. It's also great with wildlife, with tree branches, antique illustrations, wooden structures, wherever you need that deep accented color. But it also creates beautiful mixes. It mixes with raw sienna to make those vintage parchment type effects, buff titanium for antique neutrals, Payne's gray for dramatic shadows, burnt sienna for warm woodland textures, and French ultramarine for rich neutral darks. One thing I appreciate about sepia is how versatile it is. It works beautifully in realistic paintings, and it works in loose watercolor. It works in urban sketching, and it's especially wonderful if you enjoy adding line work after your washes have dried. It's one of those colors that adds just enough drama without becoming overpowering, and that's exactly why it earned its place in the Ultimate AI palette. So we've reached the final two colors of the Ultimate palette. These are colors that create atmosphere and contrast, and those finishing touches that make a painting feel complete. The first is a color that many watercolorists discover early and never want to paint without it. I think this color comes with every palette I've ever purchased. It is Payne's Gray. If you've ever noticed that my watercolor videos, you've probably noticed that I reach for Payne's Gray quite often. And there's a simple reason for it. It gives me all the depth I need without the harshness of pure black. It also mixes well with a lot of different pigments. Its pigment code is PB29 and PBK9, which is French ultramarine and ivory black. This was a transparent to semi-transparent color. It's cool, it's light granulation, and medium staining with an excellent light fastness rating. One of the things I love most about Payne's Gray is how flexible it is. At full strength, it creates rich, dramatic darks. But you add in a little bit more water, and it suddenly becomes a soft blue-gray wash that are perfect for distant mountains, misty skies, and subtle shadows. You'll see a lot of people that paint an entire painting only using Payne's Gray because it's that versatile when you water it down to the different strengths. It's used a lot for storm clouds or snow shadows. It's used in water reflections. I think every urban sketch has it in it. You can use it with birds and animal fur, especially if it's a darker color. It also works good in moody landscapes, seascapes, and just when you make that atmospheric look. So one of the favorite things about Payne's Gray, though, is how beautifully it mixes with the rest of the palette. So some common mixers is with burnt sienna for realistic tree bark and rustic wood, raw sienna for weathered stone and old buildings, quinacridone rose for beautiful, soft, moody floral shadows, green gold for deep woodland greens, and French ultramarine for those dramatic evening skies. I know some watercolor artists avoid convenience colors because they prefer mixing everything from scratch, and that's fine. But I also believe there's a value in having a color that helps you paint more efficiently, and that's Payne's Gray. It saves me time. It lets me focus on composition, values, and storytelling instead of constantly mixing another dark. And that's why it's earned a permanent place in this palette. And now, we're heading to our final color. I honestly couldn't think of a better way to finish out this entire Ultimate AI palette. This paint reminds me of why watercolor is such a fascinating fascinating medium. It doesn't just create color, it creates texture, movement, and unexpected surprises. So now we move into Lunar Black by Daniel Smith. If you've never painted with Lunar Black before, you're in for a treat. This is no ordinary black. In fact, I almost hesitate to call it a black at all because it's really a texture paint disguised as black pigment. It uses PBK 11, which is Mars Black. It is opaque. It's a cool to neutral, and it's extremely heavy granulation. It's low staining, and it has excellent light fastness. So Daniel Smith's Lunar Black is famous for one reason: its extraordinary granulation. As the paint begins to dry, the heavy pigment particles settle into the texture of the paper, creating beautiful patterns that simply can't be reproduced in any other way. Every wash becomes unique. Every painting becomes slightly different. That's one of the reasons I enjoy using it so much. This is one of my favorite colors for painting. You can create rocky cliffs, granite mountains, tree bark, weathered stone, wildlife, texture studies, abstract paintings, even dragon scales. So one of the things I appreciate most is that Lunar Black doesn't produce a flat, lifeless black. Instead, it creates visual interest. Even the darkest passages can contain beautiful texture. So, it does mix well with others. For example, with buff titanium, it becomes a beautiful granite for stone features. French ultramarine brings in dramatic mountain shadows. Quinacridone gold will make it weathered wood. And raw sienna for rocky pathways, or green gold for moss-covered stone. If you've been watching the series from the beginning, you've probably noticed that I really enjoy granulating pigments. They allow the watercolors to do the work for us. Instead of painting in every tiny detail, I let the pigments naturally settle into the paper and create textures that feel organic. Lunar Black may be the best example of that entire palette. And that's exactly why I saved it for last. How exciting is it that we are doing our last 6 colors? We looked at Burnt Sienna, Transparent Red Oxide, Burnt Umber, Sepia, Payne's Gray, and Lunar Black. Having that base colors as the last few colors is perfect. They really mix with everything, and they are standalone as well. And we did it. We finished the Ultimate AI palette. It's all filled up with these 48 colors that have endless possibilities. So, they're 48 carefully selected professional watercolors. When I first started this project, I wasn't trying to build the biggest palette. I wasn't trying to own every paint that every manufacturer makes. Instead, I wanted to build a palette with intention. A palette where every single color earned its place. Some were selected because they're outstanding mixers. Some because of their beautiful granulation. Others because of their transparency. And some just create effects that simply can't be duplicated. But together, they give me confidence to paint almost any subject, from florals and wildlife to portraits, landscapes, seascapes, architecture, and urban sketching. Looking at the completed palette now, I don't just see 48 colors. I see possibilities. I see inspiration. I see years of future paintings waiting to happen. And I hope the series has helped you discover a few new colors that will inspire you too. If you join me through every episode of the Ultimate Palette series, thank you. Thank you for painting along with me. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, your favorite colors, and your encouragement in the comments and personal messages. Building this palette has been an incredibly rewarding experience, and I'm so grateful we could do it together. If I could leave you with just one thought, it would be this. The best watercolor palette isn't the one with the most colors. It's the one that you understand. Take time to learn how your paints behave. Experiment with mixing. Play. Explore. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, because every painting teaches us something new. You can always throw away those practice sheets or use them as swatch cards later on. But every painting teaches something new. So thank you so much for being part of the Art with Marsha community. And until next time, be kind to yourself, keep experimenting, trust the process. And remember, watercolor isn't about perfection. It's about discovery. So happy painting, my friends.